The truth, dripping like honey, is always over-fermented in someone's mouth, chewed up, dissolved in saliva, and eventually reassembled with someone else's intention. It is lit like a candle and is brushed aside by the gaze of others. It is a syrup that depends on someone's mental image. No matter how carefully it is defined, it loses its outline from the moment it is spoken. It was already distorted before it was masticated, already corroded before it wilted. Even in words, people believe in the illusion that they want to believe in faith. The moment it is called faith, the sugar water has already become poison, and the sandy tower crumbles in the wind of voices. But still we seek something sweet. Knowing that it will eventually decay, we find a secret beauty in the process of decay. Perhaps truth is something that must be sweet for people to accept it. The momentary pleasure of licking deception with the tip of one's tongue may be perceived as something more fruitful than the fruit of reality. And that sweetness is always maintained at the cost of someone else's corruption. At the end of the reality that someone has chewed away, the wreckage that someone else calls truth piles up again. That is why I swallow the words without chewing them. I know that the bitterness is in fact sweet. Sweetness is always a trap. The taste of honey spreading on the tongue, it is an illusionary device set up by the phenomenal world, an alchemy that distorts the contours at the moment of touch and puts a mask over the essence. It has already been distilled many times between the gaze of the other and the refractive index of the ego, and by the time it passes the throat, it takes on an inexplicable sweetness, as if it were someone else's dream. Sweetness is a prelude to decay. The fruit grown in a hothouse of ideals is dead the moment it is plucked and crumbles softly under the fangs of time. It is not a decline, but rather a return to nature. The end of the sweetness that sought eternity is not a collapse, but merely a return to consistency. It is not the reality that is distorted, but the sense of receiving it that is always twisted. It is in this perversion, which calls love truth and seeks legitimacy in fiction, that the footsteps of true reality creep in. Sweetness is a sign that something has already been overly beautified. That is why we must carefully re-examine each bite. Is it really sweet, or is it poison in the name of sweetness? Behind sweetness, there is always something that is lost. It is a variation on what used to be called suffering, or a scream that resembles pleasure. The shimmering nectar-like reality is caught in the hands of a soft darkness. Like the distorted reflection of a worn mirror, it draws a boundary where truth and falsehood intertwine. When the luscious fruit touches the fingertips, its overripe softness bursts forth, and the dripping aroma causes a momentary euphoria. Deep within the fragrance, signs of decline lurk, weaving a stage for quiet decay. The fruit in the hands of a traveler in search of truth serves as a preacher without words, presenting another landscape lurking in the midst of distortion. Glimpsed, there is a warning of bitterness hidden in sweetness. What echoes is the sound of breathing in the silence where only questions remain. The outline of the truth is still wavering, but the sweetness of the truth is moving away from us. Layers upon layers of memories reflect the sweet passion, and at the same time, the tragic fate of decay. The reality that was born in the distant past, clad in the radiance of an innocent ideal, is caressed by the wind and distorted over and over again, occasionally revealing a faint glimmer of sorrow. This reality, which breathes as a fleeting warmth deep in the heart, is sad and beautiful, and is filled with a sense of decline to the point of madness. The distorted silhouette of truth, drifting beyond time, quietly asks eternal questions and new beginnings. The skeleton of reality is coated with the slime of its own desire. Melted by the heat of subjectivity and submerged in the lees of memory, it is an art of self-deception that no longer retains its original form. Only the convenient parts are grafted in, and the inconvenient thorns are removed, thus completing the sweet truth, a bonsai for pets. However, just as no flower blooms forever, the sweetness of the bonsai is also doomed to be eaten away by ants in the name of time. The fountain that was once filled with honey has dried up, and the touch that should have been a passionate embrace is as rough as a weathered stone. The sweet reality is transformed, just as wine tastes sour after a few years of aging. The sparkle fades, the fragrance dissipates, and the core that once captivated us becomes an empty reverberation. Sweetness is a momentary truth. Distortion is a game of perception. Fall is the inevitability of existence. In the dance of the Trinity, we find our own fragile but strong existence.